All right. There are so few Portuguese people here, but anyways. Boa tarde, everyone. Hello. All right, so I wanted to do something to kind of wake up the crowd, like make a video and stuff, go crazy, but the crowd is kind of not that great, so I'm just going to go straight to the point, which is DevTools, right? So in the crowd, how many of you guys use DevTools on like pretty much more or less daily basis? Okay, so almost everyone that's here. All right. Google Chrome debuted in 2008 and came along with it the incredible DevTools, right? And since then, many of us web developers use DevTools on pretty much a daily basis. But even though we use it daily, there are a lot of things, a lot of tools, a lot of features on DevTools that we should be using, but we're not. And that's because DevTools evolve in a really fast pace. Things are being added, things are changing, things are being removed. It's kind of hard to catch up on everything that's in there. Right? So I'm here today to share with you guys some of my tips and DevTools, my productivity tips and tricks, debugging workflow, and stuff like that, which by the end of it all will hopefully get you guys excited about Chrome DevTools all over again. But before that, a little bit about myself. I am Prashant Palikhe. This is my Twitter, but my name is kind of difficult, so I created something like bit.ly account, bit.ly Nepal-Portugal, which leads you to my Twitter account. So obviously, I come from Nepal. A couple of things about Nepal. Number one is we are not the same as Tibet. And number two is we do not all live in the mountains. Just saying. And 9 years ago, I moved out of Nepal to the Netherlands, where I finished my study in computer science and moved on to become a web developer, which I've been doing for the past 6 years. And currently, I'm working at a company called NonDutch as a front-end consultant. And by the way, NonDutch, yeah, here it comes. NonDutch is still actively looking out for non-Dutch front-end developers. So if some of you guys are curious about that, find me after the talk today or tomorrow, and we can have a chat. One more thing about me is I love the American sitcom Friends. I love it so much that I've went ahead and created a mini applet of myself, which I call Friendsflix, which I use to watch Friends whenever or wherever or however I want it. So what I've done today is I've created this buggy, less performant version of this app. So we're going to use DevTools for the rest of the session to find and fix the issues on the app, all the while learning about the things that DevTools have to offer. What I've also done is I've created this Trello board full of issues that covers a wide range of things. We got some load time performance issues, some runtime issues, some bugs that we got to debug, and the idea is to pick this card one by one and fix the issue mentioned in the card using the DevTools. So we got a lot of ground to cover. So without any delay, let's just get into it. Or in Portuguese way of saying things, vamos a isto, right? My colleague over here, David, taught me how to get this right like 1 hour straight or something, so I hope I didn't butcher it. Few things I would like to address before we actually get into DevTools. Number one is I'm going to be using the Canary build of DevTools. How many of you guys know or use Canary build? Okay. For those of you who don't know, Canary build is the latest, like the nightly developers build of Chrome, where you get to play with the latest DevTools feature. But it's a nightly build, so it might not always be stable, it may be buggy, it may be a bit sluggish, but most of the time it's okay, and you get to play with the cutting-edge DevTools feature, which is great, right? Number two, you need to make sure that the Chrome DevTools experiment flag is turned on in Google Chrome. And you do that by going to Chrome flags and look for DevTools experiment and make sure that it's enabled. And with that, we go to sorry? It's fine? Okay. With that, we go to number 3, which is when you have the DevTools flag on and you go to your DevTools settings, you're going to see this new experiments tab here, right? And if the feature that I'm talking about you cannot find in your DevTools, then it's most likely that you need to enable this experimental feature in this list. And if you can't find the feature even in this list, then we got to do some magic. And the magic involves hitting Shift 6 times. So while on this screen, I'm just going to go ahead and hit Shift 6 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a whole bunch of other things come in, right? And these are like super experimental DevTools feature that are kind of hidden away on DevTools. But you know, some of these features may never see the light of day. That's the idea. That's why they're hidden. But some of the features in here are really cool, really useful. And I've actually went ahead and turned some of them on, which I'll show you guys later. And another thing that I want to do, or I don't want to do, is constantly have to switch between DevTools and my editor. I want to use DevTools as my IDE for the rest of the session. And that's super easy to do using Workspace. All you have to do is, while you are on your app, you go to your Sources panel, and then drag your project folder in there. Just drop it. Chrome's going to ask for some permission. Over here, allow the permission. And then it's going to appear here in the file system, if you guys can see that. Maybe that's a bit better. So now you have to map your network asset to your local asset. Easy to do. Right-click on your index.html, map to file system resource. Chrome is smart enough to give you the correct suggestion. Hit Enter, and then you get this like nice little green indication showing that things are mapped. All your CSSs, all your JavaScript, everything is already mapped. Now, I don't have to leave the DevTools at all to, you know, like, everything is persisted. As I make the changes in the DevTools, it's persisted onto the disk. So if I reload the browser, it's going to be preserved. And since I'm working on the browser, I get immediate feedback. So my feedback cycle is really small, which is great for productivity, right? With that, I'm ready to show you guys the first feature that I want to talk about on DevTools, which is the command menu. You bring the command menu in by hitting Command-Shift-P on Mac. So if you guys are on different platform, you can just go ahead over here on top right, find shortcuts, and you will get the shortcut for your own platform. So on Mac, Command-Shift-P to bring the command menu. You can do a whole lot in the command menu using only your keyboards. So if you're a keyboard guy like me, you're going to love this. As an example, you can set the theme to dark, set it back to light theme, or default, that's how it's called. And like my DevTools is docked on the right at the moment, right? So I can use the command menu to type in Dobo. Notice that it has fuzzy matching capability, so you don't actually need to type in dock to bottom. Dobo is going to match to dock to bottom. So Dobo enter is going to dock it to the bottom, Do-re to dock it to the right, and un to undock. By the way, when this DevTool or inspector is undocked, you can actually hit Command-Option-I to bring this another DevTools, which is kind of inspecting the inspector, so sort of like inspectorception kind of thing. And you can go infinitely deep in this, but let's not do that right now. You know, WebTools is just a web app as well, so you can just inspect it just like any other web app. So I'm going to go ahead and put it back to the right. And with that, we are ready to pick the first card from the Trello board after the sip of water. All right. So make the app load in approximately 1 second. Load time performance stuff, right? Load time performance is all about how fast does it take for your application to load, and not just the initial HTML, but all the static assets required by your application, right? But it's not just about the load time only. It's also about how fast does it take for the browser to construct something visually important for the user and place it onto the screen, so that the user, despite having longer load time, perceives your application to be faster, about perceived performance. And whenever I want to debug like profile network-related load time performance, my go-to pane obviously is the network panel. Because the network panel tells you a story. Everything using the network activity tells you everything that starts when the user clicks enter on the URL address bar until your application fully loads and beyond. So I'm just going to go to network panel. And I'm going to make sure that this little feature over here, film strip view, is enabled. What the film strip view does, it shows you how your application was built up over time, just the way your users see it. So it's like great to profile perceived performance. So with that, I'm just going to hit Command-R and capturing recording frames. It is taking a long time, so yeah, we definitely need to take care of that. So over here, if I double-click on it, I can zoom in on the thumbnail. And once zoomed in, you can navigate through these frames using your keyboard. So here we see down here that up until 5 seconds, the browser did nothing, showed nothing useful for the user on the screen. And that's really bad. That's bad user experience. So we definitely got to fix that. So let's go ahead and diagnose the issue. Down here at the waterfall chart. And whenever I'm diagnosing network issue on the waterfall, I'm looking for huge green bars, which indicate, like the resource took a long time to come back from the server, indicating that problem is probably on the application backend or the network. Or I'm looking for huge blue bars, which indicate that it took a long time for the resource to download, meaning you probably need to send less data down the wire. So here we see immediately this huge green bar. So I'm going to hover over it. And it tells me that the server took 5 seconds to send back this data, something related to this advertisement. All right? So normally, load time is not that big of an issue if it's like an image, because browser progressively renders the rest of the thing while the image downloads. But this one looks suspicious. So I'm going to see what kind of resource it is, and it looks like it's a script. By the way, it's a third-party content, like advertisement, so it's not required. It's not a critical content for your application. So I want to quickly test out, how would the application perform if we were not using it as service? And that's really easy to do in Chrome now. You right-click on the resource, and you just do block request URL. That means the Chrome is not even going to make a request to the URL. It's like you're not using the ads. So with that, let's see how it performs. And that looks a lot better. I can show you on this one. It's like 739 milliseconds, and the app is ready to go. So that script is definitely a problem. So let's go ahead and fix it. So I'm going to go to Elements. Let's see how this script is being used. And I'm going to search for ads, and it's a script on the head. Now, the problem with this script is when the browser is parsing your HTML and building the DOM, as soon as it reaches the script tag, it's going to be like, whoa, it's JavaScript. It has the capability to modify the DOM that I'm trying to build. So I got to be careful. So I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to wait until the script is fully downloaded from the server. And when it's all good, when I know everything is safe, I'm going to parse the rest of the document. So basically, until this script was downloaded, browser had nothing built up. Makes sense. You can fix this easily by dragging this thing and placing it at the bottom of the body. That's one of the best practices in the industry, right? Just place the scripts at the bottom of the body. But it's not going to work out in our case because it's an Angular application. And an Angular application waits until the document is completely built and document ready event is fired before it kickstarts itself and does its thing. But we have another solution for that one, and that is the async attribute on the script tag. What the async attribute does is it basically tells the browser, I know I'm JavaScript, but I promise I won't do anything bad. So just go ahead and do your thing, parse the document and build the document while you wait for me to download. And when I'm downloaded, just execute me. Browser does exactly that. It even goes ahead and fires the document ready event way earlier, bootstrapping the Angular application way earlier. Should fix our issue with the load time. So I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to remove the request blocking from here because we're going to test it out. I'm going to go to index.html, and I'm just going to drop the async tag in here. Save it, go to network panel, and recapture everything. Let's see how it does. Because of the workspace, everything is being saved on the disk, so I can just reload the browser, and it's going to pick up the latest change. So yeah, double click over here. 20 millisecond widescreen, it's 20 milliseconds, doesn't matter. And go down, and 529 milliseconds, most of the stuff that the user needs to see is on the screen. So the perceived performance has definitely improved. Notice that the load time over here has not improved, but that doesn't matter. As long as the user sees the important stuff on the screen and perceives your application to be fast, that's what counts. So with that, using the network panel, we kind of guide ourselves to the problem resource and fixed it, which means we fixed our first issue. But before we move on to our second issue, I want to show you guys a couple of things in here that I find really cool. We've got these filters over here, right? We have all kinds of resources, and you can filter it by JavaScript, you can filter it by CSS. If you hold the command button, you can just filter it by multiple resource types. And over here on the search input, it's really powerful as well, because you can do things like show me all the resources that are larger than 1K. Shows you all the resources that are larger than 1 kilobyte. And if you want to see all the resources that are smaller than 1K, it's just put a negative sign in front of the query, and it's going to show you all the resources that are less than 1K. You can do stuff like show me all the resources that send back status code of 404. Not in our case. 200, stuff like that. Really powerful. And you got the network throttling over here to simulate how your application performs in shaky network weathers, right? But if you're working on like fully offline first application using service workers or whatever, you can also do that. You can bring down the network for this tab without affecting the rest of the tabs. Or you can use the command menu to do this as well. Command-Shift-B, go offline, brings down the network for this tab. Command-Shift-B, go online, and you're back on. Another stuff, if you got some JSON API, and you got this JSON response, and you want to play with it on console, like kind of manipulate it in different ways, just right-click on it, copy response. It's going to copy to the system clipboard. Now you can go to console, put it in a variable, and now you can start doing whatever, array a.for-each, manipulate it, check it out, whatever you want to do. Back to network. What else can you do here? Yeah, so we got this like different columns over here. And let's consider you have your own custom response header, like SCP response header, that you want to have an insight on in this panel. That's really easy to do now as well. Right-click on it, response headers, manage header columns, add custom header, go ahead and put your custom header, whatever you're returning, and that's going to appear in this column. Super easy. I'm just going to go ahead and remove it for now because I don't want this pollution. So removed. So that's it for the network panel for now. So let's go ahead and move on to the second issue. This one's done. Searching is too slow. All right, let's go ahead and see if that's really true. So I'm going to go over here and search something, and I typed in something, and after a while, it showed up on the screen. So yeah, it feels a bit sluggish. For an application to feel instant to user interactions, it has to respond around 100 milliseconds. And it looks like we blew the mark way off. So it's about runtime performance, right? Runtime performance is about how fast your application responds to user interactions. And my go-to place for analyzing runtime performance is the timeline panel. By the way, these panels, if you're using timeline panel a lot and you want to have it right next to the elements or something, you can just drag these and move it around, and they're going to be persisted in the session, so you can customize it the way you want it. So while in timeline panel, I'm going to hit Command-E to start recording, and just type something, hit Command-E to stop recording, and we see a bunch of data. On top over here, we see a lot of yellow, which means browsers spend a lot of CPU time doing executing JavaScript. And down here, which we call the flame chart, you see every JavaScript function that was invoked while handling our key press during the capture. Vertically, it's depth of function invocation. This function invoked this, and like that. Horizontally is the length of function execution, how long the function took to execute. So while profiling performance, you need to keep an eye on long horizontal bars. So we can check it out. Like we have the key press event. If I hover over it, it says that it took around 216 milliseconds to handle the key press. So we are way past the 100 millisecond mark. So let's go ahead and fix that. I'm just going to dive in deeper over here. We got a bunch of garbage collection events over down here. Fine. And there is one thing over here, the on episodes data received, which seems to take awful long time. If I click on it on the summary pane, it tells you exactly on which file this function is defined. Clicking on it takes you right onto that function. But if there is like a lot of data here and you have no idea where to look into, this bottom-up view is really useful as well. So you click on the bottom-up view and group by category, by the way. And then it shows you where the browser spends most of its time grouped by category, scripting or painting or stuff like that. Just opening it up, and it gives you the bottom-up view of where the browser spends most of its time, takes you directly to the problem JavaScript. And if you click on it, it's the same thing. It's going to take you to the function. So let's examine what this function is doing. So we're some promise. And down here, there is a sleeper. We got a sleeper down here. It's basically this bit of a script is basically stopping the JavaScript execution for 200 milliseconds and only then continuing, therefore jamming the main thread. And in browsers, the main thread is responsible not only for your JavaScript execution, but also to update the UI. So if you're jamming the main thread, your UI is going to completely freeze for the screen, for the users. So you definitely don't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and comment it out. Fix it, comment it, whatever. Save it. And then start typing, and that feels a lot better. And I can go ahead to the timeline and start capturing it again. So Command E to capture time, Command E to stop capturing, and that looks a lot better. We want our flame chart to look anorexic thin, and that looks really good. So over here, we got like 470 millisecond. That's like way below 100 millisecond mark, right? So that's great. Yeah, so it looks like we fixed our second issue as well. Notice that I didn't have to reload the page when I changed the JavaScript because V8 is being redone, and the changes are applied immediately. So, second down. The third one, make side menu animation buttery smooth. Okay, so we got this side menu over here that animates in kind of like this, and we want it to be smoother. Whenever something is moving on the screen and I need to profile that, my go-to place on DevTools is kind of hidden away. When you hit the escape button, this drawer comes in. And then over here on the left, find the rendering panel. And then there is this paint flashing over here. That's what I'm looking for. So with that turned on, what it does, it shows everything that the browser is painting in the viewport. It shows as a big green flash. So with that turned on, let's see how our animation is doing. So I'm just going to go ahead and click it. I don't know if you guys can see it, but there are huge green flashes there, right? So every time this thing is moving on the screen, the browser is having to repaint the entire viewport, and that's a lot of work. Paul Lewis from Google, who is this performance guru, has once nicely put that performance is the art of avoiding work. So what if we could avoid all this paint work? That could be a lot cheaper for the browser to do. And we are able to do that. But first, let's see how this navigation, how this side menu is implemented. So I'm going to hit Command-Shift-C so that I can select any element on the page, get this, and this is the drawer over here. And yeah, when the drawer is visible, we are making the left to 0. When it was not visible, it was placed minus 100%, something like that, position absolute. We can definitely fix this. And in order to understand what and how the fix works, we need to understand a little bit about how browser, at least Blink, performs rendering. It's a complex thing, but I'm going to try to put it really simple right now. Basically, what happens is like all the elements in your DOM gets painted into this one bitmap, which gets uploaded to GPU and eventually split out onto the screen. So whenever something is moving on this on the application, so the browser has to create one bitmap, another, while catching up with this good 60 frames per second rate. Create all these bitmaps, put it to GPU and to the screen. That's a lot of work. What if we could split out this moving element onto its own layer and have the GPU just transform it on the x-axis? That's a lot cheaper than the browser having to paint it all the time. And we can do that exactly. We can do that by using CSS 3D transforms. There's a new spec called will change something that also does the same thing. Basically, pull an element onto its own layer, which we call the composite layer. But will change apparently is having a problem. I saw a lot of tweets about it recently, so watch out for that one. But CSS 3D transforms is going to do the same. Pull an element onto its own 3D GPU accelerated layers. So I'm going to go over here to sources. I'm going to hit Command O to bring out this fuzzy matching file finder. Type in drawer. We got the CSS over here. And I'm just going to quickly paste the correct solution, which looks like this. So what I've done is I'm using position fixed. And instead of using transforming left value, I'm transforming the translate 3D on the x-axis from minus 104% to when it's visible down here to 0. So, and I've also used will change transform, but basic idea, these CSS values is going to pop my layer out onto its own composite layer. So let's see how it looks now. So as you can see, the green flash has completely gone away and only to the bottom. It's probably like some kind of focus ring or whatever. But we removed all the paint works needed when the browser was moving, when this drawer, the side nav was moving. Great. And this is going to perform equally good in all the devices which support the GPU accelerated. Perfect. By the way, down here, you got these layer borders. If you turn it on, it's going to, can you see that there are orange layers, borders around the things in the application, those are all the composite layers in your application, the layers that are existing on its own. But you can visualize that a little bit better using this experimental layers panel. So with the layers panel, you visualize exactly all the layers on your application, right? Not only that, it actually tells you on the left like which layers are composite layers and why they're composited. In my case, it was like 3D transform, in position fixed, and will change, and stuff like that. So it tells you why the browser does the thing that it's doing. And you see, like when you move on it, it's like you get this nice visualization about the layers that are moving onto the screen. That's layers 3 down. We're almost halfway. I'm going to put that over here and move on to the next one, which is body background color is not the same as the header. OK. Let's go ahead and check it out. Is that visible? On my screen, it looks kind of visible. What's happening is the body has a background color of like dark grayish, and the header has the background color of completely pitch black. So I'm going to hit Command-Shift-C again to find the element, which is main, and it has a background of 2 to 2. So it's an easy one. I just got to change it to 0, 0, 0. But I want to take this moment to show you some of the cool stuff that's in here. Basically, if you hit this color tab over here, this color picker pops in, right? And now I can pick any color from the page. So over here, I wanted the header one. So yeah, click on the header, enter, workspace magic, everything saved on the disk, reload the page, and it's all black and nice, and the issue is fixed. Not just that, there is a little bit more on this one. Like when you're on this color picker, you can cycle between RGB, HSL, and all these different color formats. And you also got some ready-made palettes for you. So if you're prototyping with material design, they got the material design palette over here, long hold on this, and you get different shades of colors and stuff like that. And Chrome also goes ahead and creates this custom palette based on all the colors used in your application. Really easy. And this applet is not the only applet. Over here, you got some quick action to add the background color, which shows the same applet. But you also got some box shadow editor in the Canary right now, which you can use a visual GUI to modify and work with your box shadows, blur, spread values, and stuff like that. Same with text shadow. Down here, text shadow visualizer. And same with, if I go to CSS, we also got the animation visualizer. So you can, up until now, you would have to use a third-party tool to see how your easing functions are working out. But Chrome got you covered. You got the built-in animation, and see, you can click on it to replay the animation. Or you can use a custom, like preset easing function, ease in, out, or whatever. What else do we got on the styles panel? Oh, yeah. The adding or removing the classes got really easy using this classes pane. Just add a new class. It's only a matter of toggling the checkbox instead of having to type in. Or you can just add a new one. Like, notice it also auto-completes, give you the results from all the classes that are defined in your CSS. So if you want to add a class from your CSS, it's super easy now. Enter. That's going to screw everything up, so I'm going to remove it. That's the classes pane. And this plus to add a new style rule. Normally, you just do this, and you add it like text align, center, or whatever. And it adds it to this temporary style sheet called inspector style sheet that has higher specificity than the rest of your styles. Or let's say you want to just add it to one of your CSS files. That's really easy to do. If you click on this plus button, just hold it a little longer, and then it just shows you all the files that are in your application, and just pick a new one, like base.css, sure, whatever, text align, center. It actually goes ahead and saves it on your file. And by the way, this modification that you make on DevTools have a local history of its own, so you can just go ahead and go to local modification, and it shows you all the history that you can revert, apply again. So they got you covered on that one. I'm just going to go ahead and remove it. So that was this one. And yeah, numeric stuff. Like when you were adding some number, I don't know, border, 1 pixel, solid, something like that. Like you can up or down the unit using your arrow keys, right? But you can, if you hold the shift button, it ups by 10 unit. If you hold the command button, it ups by 100 unit. And if you hold the option button, it ups by 0.1 unit. And it works the same way Let's remove this. It works the same way, like if I got over here, computer style, double click on it, and it becomes editable, and you can modify it the same way, basically. That's it on the styles panel for now. So with that, another one down again. Body background color is not the same as header. Let's put it to done. The next one is continue watching button does not do anything. I should have given you guys a demo of the application to see what the continue watching button is. But basically, it's kind of like Netflix. Like it remembers what I was watching the last time, so I can continue where I left off. So I was watching the one with the sonogram at the end, so I can continue watching. But apparently, it's not working. So let's go ahead and see what's up. Is it not working? Yeah, I'm clicking and nothing's happening. Command-Shift-C to select this item, and let's examine it. Button has some controller method defined called start watching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command-Option-F to bring this like a global search. Now we can search through an entire front-end code base. You can also do that by going over here and search, the same thing. Command-Option-F, just a keyboard shortcut to get things faster. And over here, I'm going to look for start watching. All right, it gives me the function. Click on it to takes you right there. I'm going to put a debugger in here. See what happens. And click the button. And it does not come there. So now I'm kind of curious, like, is there even an even listener defined for this element? So I'm going to go back to Elements panel, and I'm going to use this new console API called getEventListeners, which takes a reference to the DOM element. But how do you get a reference to the DOM element? You can do something like var button equals document dot query selector all, button, stuff like that. But there is an easier way to do this in console, which is $0. $0 refers to the DOM element currently selected in the elements panel. But it goes a little bit more than that. You got $0, $1, all the way till $4. So if $0 is the currently selected element, what's $1? Let me show you. So I have the button selected. Oh, $0, obviously the button. I'm going to select now playing episode. $0 is now playing episode. $1, the previously selected element is the button. So it works like that. So using getEventListeners and $0, I can see if there are any event listeners on this element. And I get this object, which is an empty object, so there are no event listeners. All right, we got to check what's happening on the source code. So I'm going to go back to search, click on this function. So we have some Angular component definition here, some bindings applied, the controller defines a method. And when that method executes, it's basically changing the URL, and we got the template. And the Angular guys probably already see it, but there is some grade A DOM mastery going here, which is instead of ng-click, there is an mg-click in here. So yeah, the solution is relatively simple. ng-click, save this file. I'm going to have to reload this page so that the Angular gets to compile everything again. Click. And now let's get back to that element. Get event listener 0, and it gives me back an object, and there is a click event listener bound to this element. So if I click on it, it should work, and it does. Cool. Now, there is one trick. Like, let's say you went into this new project, and you want to understand where in the thousands of lines of JavaScript is the event listener being defined for this specific element. Or you want to understand the internals of a JavaScript framework or something. You can use this really nice trick by obtaining the reference to these functions. Like getEventListener 0 gave me exact reference to the listener function. So let's go ahead and grab that. Listener equals, I'm going to use another shortcut over here, which is $_. And $_ refers to the result of the previous evaluation. That means this object, right? So this object has a click property, which is an array. So let me grab the first element, and it has a listener. So now I got the reference to the listener function. Now I'm going to use another API called, where's my cursor? Called debug, which expects a reference to a function. So I'm going to place the listener in there. Now what happens is every time the listener function gets invoked, DevTools is going to pause the execution on the first line of that function. So let's go ahead and click on this button, and bam, there you go. So you know exactly where the function was defined, which handled that event. And now from here, this looks like some Angular code. Let's see how Angular is doing things. If you want to learn that, just follow the track from here. This is supported on most of the modern browsers, like Safari and Firefox as well, as far as I'm concerned. But there is an easier way to do all this thing in Chrome. Oh, by the way, this is going to keep coming back, so I want to turn it off. Turning off is really easy. Just use undebug, pass in the same reference, and then it won't bother you. Done. It's also, I also use this trick to, remove listener functions from an element during the runtime. So grab the listener, element.remove event listener, pass the reference, that way. So, the friends is going on for a long time, I guess. All right, so with that, we are actually, I was going to show you that there is an easier way to do all this, right, on Chrome, which is, if you select the element, over here you get these event listeners. And it tells you exactly that there is one click event listener on this element. Open it up, you get the handler. Right-click on it, it takes you right to the function definition. So basically the same thing, but a lot easier GUI way to do it. And this is not present on the other DevTools, so it's really handy. So with that, let's bring another one down. Continue watching button is working. So the next one is side menu. The drawer can be dragged within the viewport. Okay. There's this, I had this side menu thing that you can bring in whenever you're doing some stuff, but apparently it can be brought inside the viewport. Yeah, so that's definitely a problem, right? So we got to go ahead and fix that. All right. So my workflow is like this. Okay, touch move. We are touching something, we're moving something. There's most likely a touch move handler in this code. So I'm going to use the command option F again and look for touch move. All right, drawer controller has a touch move. It was related to drawer. So I'm going to go to sources, hit Command O to bring this file finder, drawer controller, find it, enter. Command Shift O to pop in the function finder, type in move, takes me right to the function. Then I'm going to place the debugger in here. Let's see what's happening. So let's run this. All right, so let's see what we're doing. We're calculating the delta between the touches. Based on that, we're seeing what the direction is. And there is this update function that's being called, which puts in the request animation frame callback. And there is this translate x value, which is interesting. And because this translate x value is being applied to the drawers so that it appears to be moving with your finger. So I want to inspect what this translate x value is. But I don't want the debugger to stop on me every time. So how do I inspect this value and not have the debugger stop? The trick is to use conditional breakpoint. Right-click on the breakpoint. You can edit it. Now you can put a condition, JavaScript expression in here, and I'm just going to put in console log translate x. It needs to be one line down, though. The conditional breakpoint works in this way, if the expression in there evaluates to true, truthy value is going to stop the JavaScript execution there. If not, it's not going to bother. Console.log always returns undefined, which is falsy, so it's never going to stop here. But it is always going to log the value that I'm trying to log. So hit enter over there. I'm going to move it. Actually, I should have done it in here because that's where the translate x value is. So console.log translate x. And let it play. And now I can see my variable without the debugger stopping on me every time. So if I look through it, yeah, we're getting some values. And as soon as this thing enters the viewport, yeah, so it looks like the problem is the translate x value gets way over 0, and that means it's going to be inside the viewport, right? Solution, yeah, we just got to make sure that it never comes more than 0. So basically all you got to do is put a math.mean function on it, either negative or maximum of 0, save it. Let's see how it does, and bring it in, and yeah, staying right in there. All right, awesome. So one more thing I would like to show you here before we move on to which looks like the last one is the async button over here on the top right. I usually leave it on. So JavaScript, front end, lots of asynchronous stuff. Timers, promises, clicks, XHRs being fired, finished, all asynchronous. So you're dealing with asynchronity a lot, right? But you don't really get to see a nice, informative stack traces for async operation. Let me show you an example. So I'm going to go over here, drop in one of the snippets called async. So this function is doing something asynchronous. It has a promise, returns a promise that gets resolved when the timer gets fired after 10 milliseconds. And this function is being called. And when the promise gets resolved, I'm going to stop the script execution. Right? So let's see what's. Enter and check out the call stack. On async task completed. That's all it got. It doesn't tell you about where the async task started. Why did it complete? Nothing about that. So with this async, let's watch this stack trace when the async flag is turned on. So I'm going to do async flag on, re-execute the same function, and now we get this richer stack trace for our async operation. It tells me the async task completed was fired because a promise got resolved. The promise, why did it get resolved? Because the timer fired. Why? Because set timeout callback was set. Why? Because a promise resolver called it. Why? Because do something async. You get a richer stack trace for asynchronous operations. So I usually just leave it on, async tag. With that, I'm ready to go to the last one, which is side menu moves vertically when it opens. All right. So which is this one? Yeah, it does look like it's moving vertically, but I want to examine it a little better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this menu over here, animations, and then it's going to listen for animations. And with that turned on, I'm going to reanimate. So it captures something over here. Now I'm going to slow it down to 10% of its speed, replay it, and then we see exactly what's happening, right? The drawer like kind of starts on the top and slides a little bit down. I can seek it manually as well, like to see exactly what's happening. And notice that the DevTools is telling you exactly which elements was animating at that time. So if these animations are being done using CSS animations or newer web animation API, DevTools is going to capture it for you. Why is it important? Because then you can easily reverse engineer the cool animations that you see on the web. Just go there, capture the animation, and you can just examine what elements are being animated and how. So the fix for this one must be in the drawer CSS. Command O, bring in the drawer CSS. And the drawer starts on the top of 0, left of 0, y-axis 0, but when it gets visible, it's somehow being moved on by 12 pixels on the y-axis. That's what's moving it down. So I'm just going to bring it down to 0. And with that, let's recapture the animation. Bam. Let's see if we fixed it. And yeah, that's going on a straight line. So yeah, that was the last issue. So let's bring it back to done. All right, before we actually call it off, there are a couple of things that I would like to show to you guys. One of them is Snippets. Snippets is over here. On the sources panel, Snippets. And Snippets allow you to run like your JavaScript snippet on pretty much any page. For an example, I got this snippet that includes Lodash on the current page. So for me, it's the matter of using Command O, type in Lodash, takes you to the snippet, hit Command Enter to run the snippet, and then you got Lodash in your page. Easy does it. So the same way you can include jQuery, if the application is not using jQuery and if you want to bring it in. In real life, it's so you can do it so fast. Like hit Command O, type in Lodash, Command Enter, and you got Lodash in your page. You can put in whatever library you need, like that. Another thing I got over here is this Pixel Camp snippet that shows you like the schedule of the Pixel Camp. It takes the data directly from the Pixel Camp API, so it shows you in a nice table form. Like currently we are somewhere over here. And how did I do the table? Because we got a nice console.table API. It takes an object and it shows you in a nice table form. How did I make this Pixel Camp looking banner on top? Because console.log takes in this %C placeholder, and then you can replace that placeholder with CSS-like syntaxes, background of FDC, whatever, and you can style your console. Some people went ahead and did some crazy stuff, so you get to do things like this, like Pixel Camp is so awesome, followed by a huge rainbow. I did not make it, I just grabbed it from the internet. Somebody's got a lot of time. But anyways, you can do stuff like this, right? The last thing that I want to show is Node.js debugging using the DevTools. As starting node version 6.3.0, I think. Don't count me on this. I think it's 6.3.0. You have this new command line option with which you can do, like I got this node script over here. You can just, normally you do node your script.js, but now just do node, inspect. And if you want to place the debugger on the first line, debug break, and then your script. Let me zoom it in for you guys. So it's like node, inspect, debug, break, index.js. It's going to give me this nice DevTools URL. And I'm just going to copy this URL and place it on here. And then it stopped. Now it's executing Node.js script on DevTools. And I can use all the hotness from the DevTools to kind of debug my Node script. Yeah, you got everything like async stack traces, you got call stack, everything that DevTools has to offer, you got it there. And that was the last feature that I wanted to talk to you guys about. I hope that was you guys learned a thing or two about DevTools. I hope you guys found it interesting. Before I go, how do I catch up with all the things? How do I find all these features? How can you guys stay on top as well? I follow some really good people on Twitter. Paul Irish works for DevTools and tweets about or writes about performance-related stuff, how you can use DevTools to, profile and hunt down performance issues. Paul Irish. And he's super approachable on Twitter. So if you got a problem, then you can just tweet to him, and he's going to help you out. That's great. Similarly, Adi Osmani, also from Google. He is writing a lot on Medium and tweeting a lot about Chrome and fresh stuff in Chrome. And you got this guy called Umar Hansa, at Umar. And he has this DevTool tips newsletter, so you can subscribe to the newsletter, and there's going to be nice GIFs coming your way every other week about the new feature on DevTools. And of course, you got the developer tools documentation yourself, so just go ahead over here on the top right, and then go to help, and it's going to actually take you to the documentation related to this panel that you're opening. So, and they keep it really, really fresh and updated as well, so that's a really good place to go for information. And there are some GitHub repositories like awesome Chrome DevTools. If you look it up, you're going to find it there. And there are some nice stuff that you can use to make your DevTools even more awesome. And like I said before, DevTools is just a web app. So if you know JavaScript, if you know HTML, if you know CSS, you'll understand the code of DevTools. So just get the code and start digging in, looking into it. And then you get to stay on top of the game, basically. And yeah, with that, I think we are at the end of the talk. Thank you very much for your attention. Obrigado. If you got questions, now's the time. No questions? All right, great. Thank you very much, guys.